me if this sounds familiar. You're watching an episode of a TV show and it seems like it's going to be a genuinely good episode, but then something happens at the end that pretty much sours your whole experience. I'm pretty sure almost all of us know what that feels like. I'm not usually a believer that one bad scene can ruin an entire episode, but the ending can be a very important factor in the episode, so a bad ending is much more likely to ruin it. Whether it reveals a slap to the face plot twist, builds up to something that sounded much more awesome than it actually was, or anything else that can ruin the experience for you. And that's what I'm here to talk about. The top 11 good episodes ruined by terrible endings. Why top 11? Because, no, not because I'm ripping off the Nostalgia Critic, but because I just found 11 entries I really want to talk about, and I don't want to leave any of them out. With that said, let's get started.
Oh look! A magic lamp! Maybe if I just rub it and wish...
Donald's lamp trade from House of Mouse was a pretty neat idea for an episode, with the premise of Jafar tricking Donald Duck into helping him. This was especially cool since at the time I first saw this episode, Jafar was my favorite Disney villain. In this episode, Donald is annoyed with Mickey for calling him a real ham, and Jafar convinces Donald that Mickey doesn't like him, so he makes him a deal. If Donald brings Jafar the lamp, Jafar will help Donald get back at Mickey. Donald agrees, and at that time, we get some cool references, especially in the storage room. These kind of fun Disney references are what you'd expect from the show, as well as some pretty enjoyable cartoons. Though I don't remember anything from Goofy's radio when I was younger, but it was still fun. And so was Survival of the Woodchucks. Eventually, Donald returns with the lamp and brings it back to Jafar, but then Jafar reveals that he didn't want the magic lamp, that he wanted some cool lamp from Mickey's room. You have got to be kidding me. I know this isn't the only time Disney's made jokes about their own content, but this is just shameful. I guess to some people it's a harmless joke, but to me, it's just plain degrading to Jafar's character. Oh, and guess what happens next? Mickey gives Jafar the lamp from his room, and Jafar punishes Donald by turning him into a ham, and Mickey and his friends decide to have Gus Goose chase after Donald to try to eat him. That's horrible! I know Donald deserves something for trying to get back at Mickey, but don't forget, Donald is still your friend. Especially since Donald mainly did that because he was being hypnotized. So intentionally putting him in danger of being eaten is inexcusable. Not to mention it basically rewards Gus for eating everyone's food. How obnoxious can you get? Though to be fair, I guess this does at least cause our heroes to find out that Gus was a food thief earlier. So there's that. But this ending's still bad overall.
See this? This is science.
Turns out that Carl Wheezer Boy Genius isn't the only Jimmy Neutron episode that is really maddening, because it's on number 10 entry we have the Science Fair Affair. In this one, Jimmy gets kicked out of the science fair for being too smart, and they want to give the other students a chance to win for once. I guess it's okay, Jimmy has won probably like dozens of science fairs, so I guess there's not too much harm in making him miss out on just one. So in Jimmy's absence, we do get some admittedly really neat ideas for inventions, and some really good jokes out of it too, especially from Shane. And even though Jimmy doesn't get to take part in the science fair, he does get the praise of a man named Lars Svensson, who was amazed by one of Jimmy's inventions that can turn garbage into oil. And it's definitely very satisfying seeing Jimmy earn Lars' praise. So when does this episode go bad? Bulby comes in out of nowhere with his invention which makes mud, which gets on Principal Willoughby, Lars, and Hugh, and this causes them to get sucked up by Jimmy's machine. And then Bulby just straight up disappears after this scene. Yep, that's his only role in the plot. He just shows up, almost gets everyone killed, and leaves! It's no wonder I used to hate this guy. Oh, and guess what? Cindy is actually glad about this because Jimmy's going to get in trouble for it and only tries to help save the three because she is reminded that she won't get her trophy if she doesn't save them. Just when I thought the show could make me hate Cindy even more than I already do. I mean, sure, she's a little phased when reminded of what will happen, but it isn't until she's reminded of the trophy when she finally decides to take action. So she gets Carl, Shane, and Libby to use their inventions to destroy the machine in a scene that, not gonna lie, is actually pretty awesome. So now everyone's saved, and now Lars hates Jimmy for what happened. This is just so unpleasant to watch, seeing one of Jimmy's fans start to hate him, let alone over something that wasn't even his fault. It was Bulby's fault. This is quite possibly one of the most needlessly mean-spirited moments in the entire show. Not even Carl Wheezer Boy Genius's mean-spirited scenes were this hard to watch. Anyways, the judges then decide that they should give the trophy to Carl, Shane, and Libby for saving the day. That's totally original, having the characters who didn't actually win the competition be declared the winners for saving the day. Well, I'll give them this. At least Cindy didn't win. Good thing too, because she doesn't deserve to win for that horribly selfish performance. But I still think she should have gotten a worse punishment than just losing the science fair. I knew Cindy was a brat, but I didn't think it was possible for her to be this heartless. To rejoice even when 3 innocent people are about to get killed and only save them for her own selfish benefits. For shame, Cindy. For shame.
I have to go to, your
Europe?
I'm pretty sure any fan of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends will agree with me that Foster's Go to Europe has gotta have the most insulting ending in the whole show. Okay, to be fair, I haven't seen every episode of the show, but I think it's safe to assume this ending's at least up there. In this episode, Mac wins a trip for all his friends over at Foster's. As a result, throughout the episode, we are promised an awesome trip to Europe. They build up to it throughout this entire episode. It is admittedly pretty frustrating that our heroes take way too long to get ready, and the episode is pretty mean to this one character named Eurotrish who really wanted to go to Europe to see the kid who created her, but unfortunately can't because there are no tickets left for her. But at least we still have the promise of an exciting Europe trip, though I guess it would seem kinda suspicious that it took until the last 2 minutes of the episode for our heroes to get to the airport. So what reason did the episode have for that? Turns out that Madame Foster stole their tickets. Yep, all that build up throughout this entire episode for nothing. How did she even make it to the plane anyway if Mac and his friends had a huge head start and still arrived right as the plane was about to take off? And to make this even worse, Mac gets blamed for this even though it wasn't even his fault this happened. It was bad enough that you gave us an ending this insulting, but to make it so mean-spirited? Now I guess someone would kind of suspect that something like this would happen, since, as I said before, it took until the end of the episode for our heroes to finally make it to the airport, but that doesn't give them the right to build up all our hopes and then just be all like, F you, we're not doing that. Now I know that technically the rest of the episode was also really annoying at times for reasons I previously mentioned, so it wouldn't seem like the ending really ruined that much. But the thing is, if the writers didn't have the ending be like this, there wouldn't be a need for all that filler. Our heroes would have likely gotten to the airport much sooner in the episode, and we'd have spent a reasonable amount of time in Europe. Well, at least we got to spend some time in Europe during the credits, and at least Eurotrish got what she wanted in the end of being able to go to Europe. It's just too bad that she wasn't actually wanted by her creator. So yeah, this episode's ending is terrible. At least this episode's not as bad as everyone knows it's Bendy, but it still deserves all the hate that it's gotten from the Foster's Home fanbase.
If you can't do the time, don't do the crime.
Remember back in my worst episodes of Good Cartoons list when I put Mouth Off from Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness at the number 14 entry? Well, while I was planning that list, there was another episode from the show that I was considering putting on the list. I eventually decided that Mouth Off was the worst of the two, but now I get to talk about the other entry that could have made the list. That episode is known as Bossum Enemies. A good idea for a villain redemption story that they just went and blew. In this episode, Dowdai is sick of always being beaten by Po, and this time he gets himself into a very humiliating situation and starts to feel like he's lost all purpose in life. So Dowdai's son, Bian Zhao, convinces Po to try to cheer Dowdai up. Eventually, Po reluctantly agrees to help Dowdai feel better, and tries to give him a new purpose in life to use his inventions for good instead of evil. And eventually, Dowdai starts to see Po as the closest he has to an actual friend. Now this does sound like a ripoff of the SpongeBob episode Fun, and to be honest, it kinda is. But as far as ripoff episodes go, it's not half bad up to this point. Though there is one thing I find rather questionable. Around the halfway point, Po says Dowdai will be the best crime-fighting assistant ever, but Dowdai is offended by that because Po used the word assistant. That's all it takes. That's all it takes for Dowdai to go back to being bad. That is just plain stupid. I know this is a list of terrible endings, but this part right here does eventually lead to the ending being dragged out. Later, Dowdai then creates a machine that will help him destroy Po and the Furious Five, just because Po referred to him as an assistant. That's the best reason I've heard to threaten people's lives since you live in the same town as the guy who didn't give me the apology I wanted. That being said, it is pretty neat seeing a machine that can take all of Po and the Furious Five's moves and use them against them. It's not exactly original, but it still makes for a pretty inspiring fight. However, during it, Dowdai says stuff like, I play assistant to no one, and need some assistance? Hey Dowdai, here's my advice. Speak coherently. Just tell Po that you don't like being treated as an assistant instead of just making it look like you're only attacking him for no reason. But soon enough, Dowdai realized that Po got him a really nice present, being a magnifier just like the one he used to have as a kid. So Dowdai realized that he can't go through with this, so he then helps Po destroy his own invention. So now it looks like Dowdai really has turned over a new leaf. Seeing villains redeem themselves can be really nice to see at times, and this is a great example for what you can do with the idea of a villain going straight, nope, Po throws Dowdai in jail. And this causes Dowdai to turn evil again. Yeah, they literally just played with our emotions only to throw this maddening ending at us because blah 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 status quo is God. This is living proof that the status quo is God trope can be extremely obnoxious for how it completely ruins awesome endings at times. And you're going to see more than one of these instances on this list. Dowdai looked like he was going to have a really nice redemption story, but then Po had to be stupid and ruin it. When I first saw this ending, I could actually feel my blood boil. This is another thing I hate in media. When someone turns evil because of what the good guy did. Because the good guys are supposed to be the characters that we're supposed to root for, so having them do something this stupid and cause a good guy to turn evil, it is just maddening. There are only two instances of this where I've ever seen this work. The first one is in The Incredibles, where in that situation, Mr. Incredible had every right to turn Incrediboy down, because Incrediboy was an annoying little fanboy who wouldn't leave him alone. And when he saw what Incrediboy had become 15 years later, he tried to apologize. The other time is in Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, where Mermaid Man eventually got what he deserved for the way he treated Barnacle Boy, and the two reunited in the end. Now, to be fair, Dowdide's punishment wasn't entirely unjustified. I mean, he did just try to kill all heroes, so I guess his punishment wasn't necessarily undeserved. But imagine how much nicer it would have been if they had Dowdide stay good. Here's how I would have changed this episode. Have it so Dowdide attacks them not because Poe caught him an assistant, but because he was only pretending to turn good. And then, after he really does turn good, have him willingly turn himself in because he realizes his crimes. I'm pretty much 100% sure that would have made this ending a million times more bearable than what we got.
I caught the ugly!
The X and Y saga of the Pokemon anime has been widely regarded as one of the best sagas of the show. For me, it's not something I'd call one of my favorites, but by all means, it's still pretty good. Serena's liking for Ash is pretty cute, and had some really good story arcs, and Ash's performance here is definitely much more bearable than the horribly unlikable brat he was in the previous generation. That being said, it's not without its annoyances either. Team Rocket is still annoying, the video quality seems to be somewhat distorted when compared to the Unova series, the running gag of Clement's inventions exploding is honestly kinda annoying and predictable, and there's a certain problem with Serena that I'll get into in this entry. It all started back in the 60th episode of the Kalos Saga, a showcase debut. When this episode, Serena decides to make her, well, showcase debut, in being a Pokemon performer in Pokemon showcases, which are pretty much just Rare's excuse to have Pokemon contests without the battling, but I'll let that slide. It does have some strong points, such as featuring Shauna in it, she's likable, and we see Jessie competing in it, which is a plus for me because seeing her perform in contests and showcases means we have less of Team Rocket being the same boring villains they always are. Anyways, Serena and her Pokemon get ready to take part, until her performance is ruined when Fennekin trips over its ribbon because it's too long. And now Serena is very upset about this. And yeah, it is pretty easy to feel bad for Serena here. It does feel somewhat manipulative, but I still feel bad for her, and it is nice seeing her eventually recover from her depression. So what happens that causes this episode to go downhill? Well, once Serena cheers up, she decides to give herself a bit of a makeover. Well then, I guess it's fine seeing a character have a design change. Alright, let's see her new design. What is that? Honestly, why did the writers need to change Serena's design to this? Seriously, she looked so cute before. Now she just looks stupid. You know, there's an old saying that goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is why. Her outfit was perfectly fine before. Why change it? Now some of you are probably going to say that I'm being insensitive since some people do this in real life to cope with depression. I'm not saying they shouldn't do this in real life. But the thing is, this is a cartoon. They don't have to have her do this. They could easily have her recover from her depression without giving her a makeover, or at least give her a makeover but still make her look easy on the eyes. I don't mean to sound like I'm making a big deal over nothing, and I do understand that she's still the same character on the inside. I know it wouldn't be fair to judge her by the way she looks, especially since she does have some great moments even after the design change. So yeah, I understand that her character is not necessarily ruined now, but that doesn't change how from this point on, for the rest of the Kalos Saga, we are stuck looking at this ugliness, made worse by the fact that the remainder of the Kalos Saga is more than half of it. So if you plan on watching the Kalos Saga, get ready to spend more than half of it looking at this stupid outfit. Not only is it ugly, but I also can't take her as seriously in this outfit, and it also detracts a bit from some of the more intense moments of the saga when you have this stupid outfit in the shot. Again, the Kalos Saga is still good, but just why? Ash's other female traveling companions didn't have to change their main designs, and even when they did, not only were they not half bad redesigns, but they didn't change until after their respective generations were over. And even Lily, the exception to this, actually had a better design than her other one. Now, some might say I'm overreacting, but if everyone's allowed to make a mountain out of a molehill and whine about the live-action Ariel and Snow White being of different races in the remakes, then it's okay for me to complain about this. I know some people proclaim that they actually liked the ending to this episode, and I'm sure they have their reasons, but I personally hated it. Well, at least she looks decent in the instances where she doesn't wear this outfit, and at least Serena's main design looks cute again in Journeys. Oh, by the way, Bonnie also said that she liked Serena's old design better. So did I, Bonnie. So did I.
God, you all to heck!
I'm sure a lot of people in the post-movie SpongeBob reviewing community have come across at least one post-movie episode that seemed like it was going to be a great episode, only for them to ruin it at the last minute. With infamous episodes like Plankton's Regular, good old what's-his-name, Nautical Novice, the list goes on. But for me, the worst one of these would have to be Spongehenge. Now if you remember, 6 years ago I did a video where I dissed on the ending to Spongehenge, and I stated in the description that it is what I think is the second worst episode of the show. So naturally some people were surprised to see that it wasn't anywhere on my worst SpongeBob episodes list. That's because, after thinking about it, I thought it would probably be unfair to judge the episode solely by the ending. But after thinking about it some more and watching Carson RuneQuest's video on it, now I wish I had put it on the list. So in this episode, it is very windy in Bikini Bottom, and it blows through SpongeBob's holes and plays a catchy tune. And yes, it is pretty catchy, and not a bad tune to listen to. It does get a bit annoying at times, but I'll take pretty much any SpongeBob song over the one in Earworm. And it even ends up attracting jellyfish. It seems like great fun, at least until the jellyfish get in the way of him getting to work. They just won't leave him alone. During it, we do get some fun visuals with the wind though. Eventually the jellyfish annoy SpongeBob even more, to the point of getting in the way of him doing his job, and even cause Patrick to kick SpongeBob out of his house, forcing him to run away into a cave in Jellyfish Fields, until he gets the idea to build a bunch of giant stone statues of himself to play another tune with their holes. And it works, as the jellyfish love it, allowing SpongeBob to finally get back to work. Only to find out that SpongeBob has been gone so long that the Krusty Krab has been buried in sand, and that all of Bikini Bottom had been destroyed by the storm. What makes this even creepier is that this is actually a Planet of the Apes reference, and if you know how that movie ends, I feel immense pity on your soul. This isn't funny at all. I was almost traumatized when I first saw this episode as a teenager. I didn't know why I was almost traumatized, but I heard that this happened with some other people who saw this episode, so I'd say my reaction to this episode was completely understandable. The fact that they would end this episode implying that the world was destroyed and that everything SpongeBob knew is gone. And if you saw my worst SpongeBob episodes list, you would know that I hate endings where the world is destroyed. Why? Because they're just plain messed up. Okay, technically that's not how it ends. It is followed by a scene 3,000 years into the future that reveals that the jellyfish have migrated as a result of the statue's beautiful tune, but I consider that more of an epilogue than the actual ending. This is even more messed up since this would imply that SpongeBob and Patrick's last interaction was Patrick kicking him out of his house. Even if this show didn't really have any continuity, why did they think this wouldn't traumatize kids?
Well, what do you know about that? No comeuppance.
Big Hero 6 the series is a pretty enjoyable show overall. It's not one of my favorite cartoons out there, or even one of my favorite movie-based cartoons out there, but I still find myself enjoying the show. But, like all TV shows out there, not all of the episodes hit the mark. Such is the case of Mr. Sparkles Loses His Sparkle. This episode has some pretty good things going for it. This is the episode that introduces the ability to have our heroes' suits be summoned at any time they want, and we do get a cute scene where our heroes learn that Mochi has a new trick of clapping slowly, which, needless to say, is really cute. And so they decide to get a video of it and upload it to the internet to show everyone. Meanwhile, there is a famous game show called Maximum Insane Obstacle Challenge being run by a person named Mr. Sparkles. And as the title suggests, it's a series of obstacle courses. As someone who thinks obstacle courses look fun, you can imagine that this would appeal to me. Unfortunately for him, everyone stops watching him when the slow clap cat video I mentioned earlier goes viral, and even becomes the most viewed video on the internet. Which makes Mr. Sparkles mad, and so now he's out for revenge. Okay, in spite of this episode's strengths, I feel like this part falls a bit flat, because of the fact that the slow clap cat video somehow became the most viewed video on the internet. The most viewed video on the internet. I mean, I know that video was cute and all, but isn't that pushing it? And also, I don't know if others think the same as I do, but I saw Mr. Sparkles turning evil coming from a mile away. So, Mr. Sparkles then hosts another obstacle course, and this time he captures Mochi and threatens to launch him into space unless their heroes are able to clear his obstacle course in time. And he really does come up with some crazy ideas for obstacle courses that are fun to watch. And during it, he even has an obstacle much more dangerous than any of his previous obstacles, a giant blender. Yep, this guy's resorting to attempted murder now. It really makes him look like a scumbag that you really want to see get punished. And he continues to prove how much of a scumbag he is when he launches Mochi anyway, even after they beat his challenge. At least our heroes still save him though, which is good, but not good enough. Because Mr. Sparkles literally gets no comeuppance for it. He actually gets rewarded for it when it causes him to become more famous than ever before. That is absolutely disgusting. The fact that he resorted to both attempted murder and trying to suffocate a cat in space, and got rewarded for his crimes. That truly makes me sick to my stomach. Say what you want about the ending to One Course Meal, at least in that episode Mr. Krabs didn't get rewarded for his crimes. Mr. Sparkles is supposed to be the bad guy, the guy who we want to see lose in the end. So it should be obvious that no one wants to see him get what he wants. Even if our heroes also get what they want, this should have ended with him getting arrested. Now maybe it's supposed to be like with Hitler, where he became well known because of how much everyone hates him now, considering that giant wanted sign behind him. But first of all, I can't be certain since everyone seemed to love his show even after seeing his crimes. And second of all, it doesn't really work if he likes his comeuppance. Well, on the bright side, at least this makes me appreciate the episodes where he does get his comeuppance more. This, however, to say that this ending does anything but sparkle would be way too nice of me to say about this terrible ending.
Remember when you terrorized Mobius with Big Daddy Ape?
I really wanted to like the Donkey Kong TV show, because it seems pretty funny on the surface, and it also makes for some great internet meme material and great YouTube poop material as well, so I wanted to see if I could enjoy the show itself. But unfortunately, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't. For a couple reasons. The first one being that the animation actually hurts my eyes just looking at it. And the other being that two important characters from the show drag it down a lot. One being Inka Dinkadoo, being a horribly unlikable tyrant who is supposed to give our heroes advice, but only gives it in the form of really confusing metaphors, and ruthlessly threatens them for not understanding his stupid metaphors like the horrible tyrant he is. And the other being Candy Kong. In this show, she is just one of the worst brats you could possibly imagine. Just how unbearable and obnoxious she is with the way she constantly abuses Donkey Kong makes me want to pick her up and violently slam her onto the ground repeatedly. So I guess it's only fitting that there'd be an episode from that cartoon on the list. This one being the show's final episode, Message in a Bottle Show. In this one, Donkey Kong finds a letter that says that he's being called to become future ruler. And so, everyone decides to throw him a party. The idea that Donkey Kong gets to be king sounds like it'll be a great way to end the show. It makes us proud of Donkey Kong for this, and it's also a bittersweet conclusion to the show since he has to say goodbye to all his friends. And during all this, we get some clip shows of some other scenes in the show, which seems like a great way to celebrate the occasion. I couldn't have come up with a better way to end the show myself. Which is why it comes as a huge slap to the face when it was revealed that DK wasn't being summoned to be king after all. He just read it wrong. The letter was being addressed to Monkey Kong instead of him. And then the episode ends with all of DK's friends hating him. This is an even more insulting and needlessly mean-spirited ending than the one to Foster's Go to Europe. Why did these writers think this terrible ending would be funny? It's not funny, it's horrible to watch. Besides, Diddy and Cranky read it wrong too, so why is Donkey Kong the only one getting backlash here? Did these writers even look over this episode before releasing it for everyone to see? Or did these banana brains just decide to throw this stupid plot twist in at the last minute and not even bother thinking about if it made any sense or not? You know what? I think I'm leaning towards the latter.
N is for no survivors.
Mother Nature from Fairly Odd Parents. While this episode is definitely a better episode than its sister episode, which I'm hoping to get to in a later countdown, overall it's just not a very good episode. Okay, actually it is, up until the episode ends. I mean, it does have some great jokes in it, such as the running gag of the weathermen being run out of town by angry mobs. In this one, Timmy's mom gets the job on the Weather Channel because she's not getting enough attention from her son and husband. Problem is, she does a pretty lousy job at it. So Timmy, not wanting people to hate his mom, decides to wish that his mom was right about the weather. And that gives us a pretty creative idea. A weather person whose predictions always come true. And they do give us some creative ideas with it, and some good jokes out of it too. But eventually Timmy starts to miss her. Even though I don't know why he does because she's a horrible parent, but whatever. So Timmy's mom finds out how much he misses her, so she decides that she wants to get fired so that she can spend time with her family again. So she decides to get fired by predicting extremely harmful weather. This might just be one of the most hateable things Timmy's mom has ever done. I know that she means well, but the fact that she's willing to risk the lives of thousands of innocent people is extremely scummy of her. Especially since that includes Timmy, the one she's doing to spend more time with. Well, she can't spend time with him if he dies in it, but that's not even half of why I hate this ending so much. So what does Timmy decide to do in order to save the town? He decides to wish up some things to protect the town from the weather, which would be fine enough. He does think of some pretty crazy and neat ways to protect the town, but he decides to send all of that hazardous weather over to a nearby city known as Brightburg. That's right, Timmy's wishes literally just destroyed an entire city and presumably killed everyone in it. The fact that Timmy would knowingly wish harm on thousands of innocent people, that genuinely disgusts me. I know that Timmy doesn't always behave himself, but I'm pretty sure it's way out of character for him to knowingly cause thousands of deaths when the citizens of Brightburg did nothing wrong, other than living in a city that Timmy doesn't like. Seriously, I'm not a fan of Gary, Indiana, but I'm not going to wish mass genocide against its inhabitants. I know that a lot of Timmy's wishes end up being a disaster, but whenever that happens, that's usually never his intention. At least in Spongehenge, as horrific as that episode's ending was, at least in that episode, SpongeBob wasn't to blame for the destruction. Oh, and guess what? Even though Timmy's mom was the one whose stupidity almost destroyed the town, and Timmy knowingly did destroy an entire town, they get no comeuppance for it. Instead, Timmy's dad is the one who gets chased out of town by an angry mob. Just why? Okay, to be fair, I guess he deserves something for neglecting his wife earlier, but what his wife did was much, much worse than what he did. So that should have been her getting run out of town, because she would have deserved it 100%. Heck, I'd argue that out of the three, Timmy's dad did the least terrible things of the three, so he would deserve it the least. I just don't understand what these writers were thinking, because this ending is just a natural disaster by itself.
What an embarrassment. I've been robbed.
Back at the Barnyard is a show that I don't know why I even bothered with. This show is just plain stupid. Why? The jokes are obnoxious. When they're not just relying on the characters to be as stupid as possible, they're either using jokes from the movie except running them into the ground, or resorting to satire humor, except they make their satirical jokes way too obvious that they're being satirical, that it actively feels like they're talking down to their audience. Especially since a lot of them feature the characters screaming at the top of their lungs to the point of being extremely jarring. And believe me, I definitely have plans of doing a list of the worst episodes of the show. But believe it or not, there are a small handful of good episodes in it. Whether it be Meet the Ferrets, where Freddy's annoying obsession with trying to eat Peck isn't present, and instead he's willing to do whatever it takes to save him, Dummy and Dummier for proving that the show can be funny if it really tries, or Top Cow for just being plain fun. And the number 2 entry on the list, Arcade of Doom, seemed like it would be a case of the latter, being just plain fun. I mean, it takes place in an arcade. What's not to love about those? Our heroes are hoping to win a video game system known as a Z-Box, especially considering how they're sold out everywhere, so it seems like this is the only way they can get one. Only problem is it costs 10,000 tickets. So now our heroes have to play to win that many until they can finally afford it, but they also have to worry about Snotty Boy getting to 10,000 tickets before they do. Eventually, they do manage to reach 10,000 tickets, and it feels very good watching our heroes' hard work finally pay off. At least until this happens. Another kid comes up and tells them that he was hoping to win it for the kids at the orphanage. Now you're probably thinking, oh, it's one of those overdone scenes where a character has to give up something to someone who needs it more than they do. Actually, no. That's not what they're going for. But trust me, it would have been a million times better than what we actually got. Otis then gives the kid the Z-Box, but then it is revealed that the kid was actually lying to them and our heroes just got scammed. You don't know how mad I was when I first saw this scene. If I were Otis, I'd go somewhere and change out of my human disguise and then chase that kid down the street. I don't care if this was supposed to be a satire on these kinds of endings. I'd rather them have the kind of unoriginal ending they were subverting than to have it end on this infuriating of an ending. Or, better yet, don't have a scene like this at all. Have our heroes actually succeed at getting the Z-Box they wanted, and have them be able to take it home. Oh, but who am I kidding? This show will take any opportunity, and I mean any opportunity to make satirical jokes, no matter how frustrating it'll be. And this might even be their only chance to win one of these, since, as stated before, they're sold out everywhere. And yeah, this kid gets away with stealing the thing that our heroes worked very hard for. If you couldn't already tell by some of the things I said on this list, I can't stand when a villain gets off scot-free for doing something bad. At least in Mr. Sparkles Loses Sparkle, that could be seen as a to-be-continued situation depending on how you looked at it. And at least in that episode, our heroes still got what they wanted. This, however, we get no such thing. Only one question remains. What could possibly be worse? Well, before we answer that question, here are the honorable mentions. Something's fishy from Fairly Odd Parents. The fact that the episode ends with all the Atlanteans hating Timmy and forming an angry mob after him. I mean, to be fair, he did do something to deserve that, which is why it isn't on here. But trust me, this was really, really close to making the list. Gone from SpongeBob. Cool concept of SpongeBob being the only one left in town and trying to make the most of his life, until it is revealed that the reason they were gone is because they straight up abandoned him. They all left him to worry and go insane while they dance in the remains of a statue of him. How cruel are these people? Unfair weather friends from Pokemon. It was actually pretty jerkish of the episode to build up Millie to be this awesome waifu who proves herself to be extremely competent, which wasn't very common to see in women in cartoons back then. Only for them to suddenly reveal at the end that she was actually a boy in disguise. At least the real Millie shows up soon after, but she literally does absolutely nothing, which is a huge downgrade compared to the awesome waifu they made us think she was. The March of the Exeggutor Squad from Pokemon. The ending has Ash's Charmander evolving into Charmeleon, which doesn't seem very hopeful yet, until the next episode revealed that this filthy traitor suddenly started to be completely obnoxious to him. Well, at least it redeems itself in Charizard Chills. 64 episodes later, Hard-Boiled Eggie from Penguins of Madagascar. Remember how satisfying it was when Eggy ended up being more on the penguin side than the lemur side of paternal instinct? Yeah, nope, they made it so the only way to solve this episode's problem is to have him change sides and be on Julian's side now. But that being said, when he sides with Julian, the worst he does is call the penguins silly penguins, so I guess I can handle it. The Legend of Zelda cartoon. Widely regarded as one of the worst things that the Zelda franchise has ever given us, and its hate is completely justified. A couple years ago, I did skim through a few episodes featuring King Arcanian once, and it didn't seem like it would be that bad, but I didn't want to push my luck. So earlier this year, I decided to give the rest of the show a try, and I soon regretted it. This show is thankfully only 13 episodes, but yeah, this was pretty painful to get through. Especially Link, was literally the most annoying he has ever been, with how selfish and stupid he is, and his annoying "excuse me, princess" catchphrase. And Zelda, who is admittedly kinda hot, is also pretty bratty. I'd be more mad at her if I hadn't seen Candy Kong's TV show counterpart, so this one is at least not as bad as her, but she's still arguably the worst incarnation of Zelda. Anyways, despite that, however, even though I didn't like the show, I could at least tolerate it, at least until I got to the ending of one particular episode that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The show's final episode, the Moblins are revolting. And yes, believe it or not, this did seem like it was going to be a pretty good episode. It's a pretty cool idea seeing Ganon's own minions betray him and trap him in a bubble, and try to take Link and Zelda's Triforce for themselves, and seeing how incompetent they are at doing so is actually kind of funny to watch. And it also gives Link and Zelda the perfect opportunity to finally reclaim Ganon's Triforce that he stole, because with both Triforces, they can restore peace to Hyrule. Seems like a perfect way to end the series. Well, almost seems like a perfect way. It does seem kinda anticlimactic since there's no actual fight with Ganon required to get the Triforce, but I guess I can take it. But guess what? Being the terrible show that it is, guess what happens? No, seriously, just take a guess. Link decides to be stupid, which ends up freeing Ganon. I cannot even begin to tell you how much this infuriated me when I first saw it. At both Link for being the worst incarnation ever, and the writers for being this stupid. The fact that this episode basically teased the idea of the show having a proper ending, but that's not at all what we got. This is the way they chose to end the show. This is literally the stupidest thing that Link has ever done. And the fact that his response to this mistake is barely just an oops doesn't make him look much better. I'll even go as far as to say that his performance here literally makes me miss his CDI performance. And between both of these performances, it's making me start to worry that maybe the idea of a Zelda movie isn't as exciting as I thought it would be, considering how the movie will likely have to make Link talk. I'm not a believer in that Link is literally incapable of speaking BS. I would be all fine and dandy with Link talking, if not for how both of his well-known appearances that feature him talking have him being at his absolute worst. That is not helping their case. I'd be more worried if Link wasn't thankfully more bearable in the Captain N cartoon, but still, why couldn't they have ended this episode with our heroes getting back to Triforce? I mean, that's how the game ended, so why didn't they have the show end this way too? I've seen a lot of annoying instances of the status quo as God trope. When this is literally the last episode of the show, there is literally no excuse to do that. As someone who regards Link as one of my favorite video game heroes, this genuinely hurts me a lot as a fan of both Link and the Zelda series. To think that Link, one of the coolest video game heroes of all time, is responsible for completely ruining a show and what could have been an actually decent finale to it, and the Zelda franchise is associated with this abomination of a cartoon. I was excited to finally be at the last episode of the show, because that would mean I wouldn't have to suffer through any more of it. But this ending was so atrocious and unforgivable that I wasn't even glad it was over. I was just extremely bitter towards this ending. This is where the show finally crossed the line for me, and it proves how it's horrible as both a show and an adaptation. So not only is this the #1 ending that ruined a good episode, but the Zelda cartoon might even be the worst TV show I've ever seen. Thank goodness that's all in the past, because I never want the Zelda series to make something like this again.